Babs, we're coming up to the 100th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Your granduncle Tom Ryan played for Tipperary on Bloody Sunday. Can you tell me what you know about Tom Ryan?
We were lucky enough, as I said, lucky enough to have a family member like Tom Ryan to look up to. He was very explicit in the events of Bloody Sunday, meeting, got on the train at Hurlers for him. And the first incident, there was one or two of the players from the east of the county. They got on board in Kilkenny. They joined the team in another carriage, and a few of the British officers joined and went into the same carriage, and there was some words, and a row broke out. And Tom Ryan will explain in his story that himself and Jim Ryan went in to see what commotion was on, and they threw one of the British officers out through the window of the train. And they were kind of concerned what might happen when they got into Houston at the time. And they couldn't believe that there was no welcoming party there for them. He thought that the police or the British Army might be waiting there for them, but it didn't happen. And they went to Bill Shanahan's pub, which is in Lower Dorset Street. Now today I think it was Phil McGrath's for a long time after that. And they got word there, because when you think of the Tipperary team at the time, there was only Tom Ryan and Mick Hogan, members of the volunteers, and one or two of the Dublin team that were volunteers. They would have been aware of the connection, and there was some word of what was going to happen on Sunday morning, but very discreet. But the one thing I remember, he told me that they had this, Phil McGrath's pub was a kind of a meeting point for the IRA at the time, and he had an underground cellar that stored guns and all, and they had to be delivered to, I think, up near where the Barry's Hotel is today, or the Derville Hotel. And he got the job with another man called Walsh, and I knew his brother rather well in Clonmel. And they bought the guns. They walked at each side of the street, so that well armed in case they were stopped. But anyway, they got through that mission. And now there's some conflict, as I understood from him. It said that the team stayed in Barry's, but I understood that he stayed with one of the Dublin's comrades at the time, that there was a question mark whether Barry's was going to be raided. And he got a tip-off from Dan Breen as well, to be careful. And he equally got a tip-off from Dan Breen after the match. Now, Dan Breen, as you well know, is a famous name in Tipperary. And Dan Breen certainly warned him not to go home on the train on the Sunday night with the team. And and advised all the team not to go home in case of problems, which he didn't. He made his way home some other way. But the description then of the game itself is that a plane flew over Croke Park and left off flares. Now that was obviously a signal for the auxiliaries to raid Croke Park. And with his experience through the volunteers and the training he had, Mick Hogan was beside him with one of the Dublin players, and he shouted, "Lie flat down," because that was the best way of cover. And unfortunately, when there was a lull in the firing, Mick Hogan made a run for it, and about 20 yards away from where Tom Ryan was lying down, he was shot in the back, and Tom got to him, and he saw the last words he uttered was to Tom Ryan, "Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I'm finished." Now Tom then made a run for it over the wall, jumped the wall, and now he got his jersey torn in the barbed wire, and he made his way up Clondiff Road into a sympathiser's house. Obviously the doors were open with the the army and the auxiliaries raided every house and rounded up every player, and he's described the nastiness of those that arrested him, and the way they treated the house owner by knocking him out with a butt of a rifle, and they ripped the togs off of him with a bayonet. And one of the things he described is that only Mick Hogan and himself had the tricolour on their socks, so they were, in terms of array, they were easily identified. But I'm nearly certain that they were the only two who had a tricolour on their socks because of their commitment to the cause at the time. But so they marched them back, and they threatened to. Now on the march back there was a sympathiser again, and he threw them. Being the middle of November, obviously everybody had overcoats and raincoats, and the sympathiser threw him an overcoat, and those that arrested him hit the guy, the person that gave him that overcoat, with a rifle as well. And to tell you, like, you know, the bitterness that they built up, and the hatred that there was for the British and the Black and Tans that were in Ireland at the time. And it was easy enough, like, to get the people to support the cause because of their behaviour. Those that arrested them threatened that they were going to be shot. The whole team were going to be shot. As I said, there was a sympathiser within the army, that high-ranking sympathiser and a high-ranking officer that certainly made sure that didn't happen. And they made their way back to the dressing room, whether their clothes and their belongings were raided, and they were left with nothing really.
What does it mean to you to have a family member, you know, who was, you know, so involved in Bloody Sunday, and the 100-year anniversary of Bloody Sunday? What does that mean to you now?
John, it means an awful lot, and I'll tell you what it means to me is the integrity of the man. He had a tremendous, like, with very little education. He was you know, a very accomplished man.
Did he talk much about Bloody Sunday?
He didn't. He was reserved enough, John, about you know, and at the end of the day, John, it was only 2 days in his life. As I said, the events travelling up, the events of the day itself, and he was lucky enough, he could have been Mick Hogan. He could have been one of the 13 that died. He was that close to it. But I would say, as he described, his experience and training in warfare gave him that little advantage. And I can't think of the Dublin player that was with him who survived. They were close. The others were close enough to the dugout, but he was obviously in front of the goal, ready to take a penalty.
Is it very important to remember, you know, Mick Hogan, and to remember those events? It's an important chapter in the history of Tipperary GAA, isn't it?
John, it's huge. It's huge. Like I said, the monument is there for us all. The Hogan stand, the Hogan Cup, but the family itself, you know, the family and their background represented what ruled Ireland. There was no difference between where Mick Hogan came from and my family. Well, there was 5 in my family growing up, all involved in GAA. Mick Hogan's family was the same, even though it was kind of 40 years before I started emerging as a juvenile player. And we were a very close community in South Tipperary, you know, so like, Bloody Sunday was, you know, fresh in all our minds, and if you were interested in football, and particularly Tipperary football, it was a huge event in our lives.